So the question someone asked me was, should they study fashion before starting a clothing line? And that's a good question. The thing is though, that question doesn't have just one answer for it because there's a lot of different things at stake here when you talk about studying for fashion. And there's a lot of variables. And let's talk about what those variables are and whether or not you really need to study fashion before you start a clothing line. Let's discuss next here on Making the Brand. What's up, everybody? Rob Norman here for Planet Brooklyn Academy, and this is Making the Brand, the series where I give you a little knowledge and insight on how to start a clothing line, and if you already have one, how to make it better. As always, please hit that like and subscribe button, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so you can stay up to date with everything we drop when it drops. Education is key to understanding anything, whether it be fashion or engineering. We all need to study up on it before we start to do it. But do you really need to study 4 years of fashion if you're going to start your clothing line? Well, the short answer is yes, but not studying 4 years of college is necessary for everybody going into the fashion game. Take, for instance, streetwear is a category that you don't really need to study fashion so much. You really need to study more of the actual, category of streetwear, understanding streetwear. Also, streetwear is different because I believe in the 75-25 rule for that particular category. And what that rule is that when you're talking about streetwear, 75% of it is marketing, 25% of it is actual product. A lot of brands that I've seen that's come out over the years, I've seen some brands that have amazing garments, well put together items, but they didn't go nowhere. And that's because they basically didn't have any money for marketing. No one really got to see them. They weren't out there. They were kind of underground and stayed underground. And unfortunately, they didn't blow up. Then I've seen other brands who weren't as talented as those and had much more money to put into marketing, or they diverted most of their money. Instead of putting it into design, they put it into marketing, and they blew up and they became really big. And again, it was them who did that, or they put their products on certain individuals and the brand was seen. So once certain people were wearing it, the value of that brand went up. So people suddenly wanted it. And I knew that certain brands like that weren't really worth that much because the quality wasn't good. But yet the perception was that because people were wearing it of famous stature, that the brand was a well-to-do brand. And that was the success of that. So in that 75-25 scenario, you really don't need to know fashion as much, but more so the business and marketing aspect. Now, do you need to go to school for that? You could study, you could take a course. You don't need to do 4 years, but you can take a course in that. Now, when we think about the other side of fashion, when we're talking about, design, when you're sitting down, you're actually drawing and sewing, that you need to study a lot more, and you should be taking courses in that. Now, again, do you need to take 2 or 4 year courses to learn that before you start a clothing line? Not necessarily. You may be somebody starting a clothing line, you have a partner, and your partner may know fashion design already, but you are more interested in the actual development of that. So you may just need to be able to take a course in product development, or you may want to take a course in pattern making. So these are things that you can take and just do on the side along while you're actually starting your clothing line. You're going to learn, but you may need to learn specific aspects of the fashion industry that you want to learn. Now, there are people who are born for this, and they've known their entire life they wanted to do fashion. So they've gone to fashion schools, they've studied. That's what they wanted to do. Then there are other people who have come into the game who found the passion for fashion and wanted to get into it. So does it make sense for you to start all over and go back to school? Well, it depends on if you want to go that far back. I myself did not start in fashion. My background is in graphic design. Now, I did go to the Fashion Institute of Technology, But even though it is the Fashion Institute of Technology, they have other programs there other than just fashion. They have toy design, they have illustration, they have advertising design, and they have graphic design. So I studied advertising and then graphic design for my bachelor's. So I wasn't involved in learning about fashion, neither did I have an interest in fashion at the time. Once I graduated from school and, a few years in the industry working, in music and in advertising, I suddenly picked up an interest in fashion. And I realized that what I was designing on paper, I can do on garments. So it led me into fashion that way. Now, I was blessed enough to have a business partner who was from FIT also, but he was actually a designer. So he handled the designs and I worked on the graphic end of it and the advertising and marketing. Now, I wanted to learn more about it, so I left my job in advertising and got a job in fashion. And I started learning how fashion worked that way. Now, some people may not want to go back to school. Getting a job in the field is just as good as actually taking a class because you're doing hands-on. That's what I did. I just went in, got a job doing graphic design for different companies, but I spent time sitting with the production head. I sat time with sales. I sat with marketing. I watched how everything was done and I learned that way. So I understood that when I started my line, I had a better understanding on things I needed to learn. I didn't go back to school to learn it. I had hands-on knowledge working in companies. And you can do the same. If you want to start a company, you don't necessarily need to go back to school. You may be able to take an internship, or shadow somebody a couple of days a week, to see how they work, if they will allow you to do that, and just see how things work. Internships are great for that. And sometimes, it's great when you're in college to do an internship, but if you're outside and you graduated already, you may be thinking like, well, I have a 9-to-5 job, I don't have time for internships. You can still do some. Sometimes people, allow you to come in on the weekends with them or whenever they're going somewhere, you can follow them. And that's what I meant by shadowing somebody. You actually get to go with them to the factory and they will explain to you what they're doing. Or if they're going to be, in a meeting looking at the line, you can sit in and understand what they're doing with the line for that particular season. So you're learning. And the thing for me is that even if you had to do an internship and you have a job and say you have to cut back on hours just to do the internship, look at it this way. You're going to learn, even though you may take a pay cut, but you're also doing an internship. You're learning opposed to keeping your job and then trying to take classes and spending a lot of money where now you're in debt. So in the end, that in the internship is only going to last but so long. Then you can move on and keep doing what you're doing. If you're in school, you're looking at a 2-year program and maybe a 4-year program that you're doing. So you got to figure out that you're going to be spending a lot of time and a lot of money for that. So sometimes the internship is just as good as doing the classes because you're in the real world setting. So to learn it that way is great. Now, a lot of people like to use YouTube as a way of learning things, and YouTube is good to a point. At some point, you have to get beyond the computer and actually be with somebody that can show you those things. That's just like trying to learn martial arts from a magazine. You can look at a magazine and you can see how it's done and you can copy the moves, but to actually learn the technique, you need to go to a physical, school and learn that. The same goes with fashion. You can look at YouTube and everything and learn things, but there are little things that are taught, by individuals when you go hands-on with them. They'll show you shortcuts to doing things. They'll show you other ways to execute items that you didn't know how to do before. So you do need to get a hands-on. But again, think about what aspect of the fashion business are you trying to go in. If you're starting a clothing line, are you going to be handling marketing? Because if that's the case, then just take a class on marketing or social media or are you going to be the person that's going to be doing the designing? So what are you going to design? Because if you're going to do runway type stuff, you need to understand the full scheme of fashion. You need to understand how things are assembled. Fabric weights, what works better with what. Those things are much more intricate and you need to study and learn that. So if you're going to go that route, you're going to have to look at figuring like, I'm going to have to learn, fashion. But again, if you're doing something like, even if you're doing pet clothing does not take a lot of learning to do. So you may want to just study a little bit more on business and marketing. In the end, it's all subjective. It depends on where you want to be in your business. How much do you need to learn? You don't need to know everything up front. You may be able to start with a little bit, and as you build your company, you start learning more. But again, it all depends on what you want to learn. So at the end of the day, do you need to study fashion? You don't need to study it like, get a degree in it, but you should know at least the amount that will help you get to the next level or the next stage of your clothing company. And once you get there, then you see how much more you need to go back to school for, or how much more you need to read up on, or how much more you need to take this course in. But I recommend that if you haven't been doing this your entire life, if you haven't been doing fashion your entire life, or you didn't go to college yet and you want to do fashion, then I say, go study fashion and start your clothing line at the same time, or start assembling your concept for it. So by the time you graduate, you can start it. If you are way out of college and you're thinking of going to fashion now, think about maybe taking a summer course in fashion, or doing an online course, things like that. But again, it really is subjective, and it's really up to you what you want to learn, how much you want to learn, and how much time you have to learn it in. So think about that. There's always room for learning, whether you're in school or out. But again, think about what you want. All right, I hope that was helpful for you guys. As always, if you have any comments or thoughts, please leave them in the comment section below. And we drop new videos every week. And I'm sorry that we've been a little late with the last couple of videos, but caught up with our spring summer line that we've been putting out. So we've been in the middle of production with that, and photo shooting and commercial spots we've been working on. So I had to stop and make sure that I got out this video this week for you guys. All right, so until next video, I catch you guys later. Peace.